So here's a question for you. How could a life of almost constant, debilitating illness produce one of the most powerful, life-affirming philosophies in all of history? Well, that is the central paradox of Friedrich Nietzsche. You see, instead of being crushed by his suffering, he used it as the very furnace to forge a radical new way of looking at what it means to be human. Let's dive into how one specific moment of recovery, which he wrote about in The Joyful Wisdom, became the spark for this entire philosophy. And this line right here, this is the key to the whole thing. He wrote it just as he was coming out of a really intense period of sickness. And it's so much more than just, I survived. It's a declaration of purpose. For Nietzsche, living and thinking were completely inseparable. To him, survival wasn't this passive thing. It was an active intellectual necessity. And this idea, an idea literally born from his own pain, became the bedrock for everything that came next. You know, to really get Nietzsche, you have to start with the pain. His life was just this relentless battle with chronic illness. It was a physical abyss that was always threatening to swallow him whole. But it was from the very bottom of that abyss that his most incredible insights would emerge. And here's what's so crucial. Nietzsche didn't just endure his suffering, he actively used it. It's like he treated his own pain as raw material, a subject to be studied and understood. And this completely transformed his struggle, right? It went from being a personal curse to a philosophical crucible where he forged his most radical ideas about our existence. So, this philosophical crucible, it really reached a boiling point in 1882. While he was recovering in Genoa, Italy, Nietzsche had this experience that he described as a profound philosophical rebirth. And this wasn't just about feeling better physically, not at all. It was a complete reorientation of his spirit, a brand new beginning that he would immortalize with a really specific and symbolic title in The Joyful Wisdom. He called this new chapter Sanctus Januarius, or Saint January. And this is just classic Nietzsche, okay? It's this brilliant, triple-layered symbol. You've got the new year, a reference to the Roman god Janus, who looks to the past and the future, and a Christian saint. For Nietzsche, this was his personal manifesto. It was him declaring victory over nihilism, that feeling that life is meaningless, and it marked the real start of his new life-affirming philosophy. He actually described this personal renewal as a spiritual thawing. Just picture that for a second, like the ice sheets of his soul were finally melting. It was his liberation from the cold, depressive moods his illness had trapped him in for so long. And this wasn't some kind of supernatural event. It was a psychological miracle, a total reawakening of his vitality and his creative power. And this reawakening, this surge of creative power, it wasn't just some fleeting feeling. No, it solidified into a core concept, into something Nietzsche would call his actual formula for greatness in a human being. And that formula is amor fati. It's Latin for love of fate. But look, this is not just about accepting what happens to you. Not even close. It is a passionate, unconditional embrace of your entire destiny, the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. It's about actively wanting your life to be exactly as it is and as it was. And this is a really crucial point. Nietzsche drew a very hard line between his idea and just passively giving up. So on one side, you have fatalistic resignation, which is basically just gritting your teeth and putting up with things. But on the other side, you have active amor fati, and that is an empowered choice. It's an act of supreme will where you declare that everything that happens isn't just accepted, it's desired. I mean, he couldn't have put it any clearer. You don't just bear what's necessary. You don't just tolerate the hardships. You have to love them. But why? Why would you do that? Well, because they are an inseparable part of the whole picture. They're a necessary part of you. So how is that even possible? Nietzsche's answer was to adopt what he called an aesthetic lens. So, step 1, start seeing your life not as a string of random events, but as a work of art. Step 2, embrace all the elements, the joy, yeah, but also the pain, as essential pieces that create contrast and depth and meaning. And then finally, step 3, recognize that you are the creator of this work of art. Adopting this perspective, it changes everything. It turns you from a victim of your circumstances into what Nietzsche called the poet of one's life. Suddenly, suffering isn't some ugly flaw you wish would go away. It's the necessary shadow that gives the brighter parts of your life their brilliance. By finding value within suffering, this whole idea directly challenges any belief system that tells us to look for meaning or salvation from some outside force. So, when you adopt this aesthetic lens, when you become the poet of your own life, it leads you to this ultimate state of being. It leads you to become what Nietzsche calls a yeser, someone who affirms life in its totality, with absolutely no reservations. And this question, this is Nietzsche's ultimate test. It's the thought experiment he called eternal recurrence. Think about it. Could you affirm your life so completely, so totally, that you would joyfully choose to repeat every single moment, every win, every mistake, every ounce of pain over and over and over again forever? A yes to that question, that is the highest possible expression of amor fati. And this brings us full circle, right back to Sanctus Januarius. Because for Nietzsche, the real miracle wasn't some saint's blood supposedly liquefying in a vial. No, the true miracle is psychological. It's the incredible human capacity to melt the frozen spirit of resentment and despair into a powerful, vigorous, joyful yes to life. So, we're left with this really powerful and provocative thought from the Joyful Wisdom. Nietzsche's journey from his sickbed to this incredible insight challenges all of us to re-examine our most basic ideas about hardship. What if suffering isn't a bug in the system of life, something we're just meant to avoid or get over? What if it's a necessary, and maybe even a beautiful, feature?